Hello, my name is Damon Friedman, co-founder and president of SOF Missions. As a 20-year veteran within Special Operations, I've gone through many challenges due to my military service and time in combat. We felt called to start SOF Missions to serve our fellow brothers and sisters in arms, focusing on suicide prevention and resiliency. Our mission at SOF Missions is to empower warriors to find purpose and be resilient. Since 2011, when we started the organization, almost 3 million men and women have deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the scars of war take a toll on their psychological, physical, social, and spiritual health. Many veterans feel a sense of hopelessness and a loss of purpose when they return to civilian life. They feel isolated and alone, unable to reconnect. And in the greatest of tragedies, over 20 veterans lose all hope and take their own lives. Our goal at SOF Missions is to provide veterans the tools and resources so that they don't become a statistic. We offer a unique approach to combating veteran suicide through a whole health intradisciplinary model. The Be Resilient program is a 4-pillar methodology that addresses the areas of psychological, physical, social, and spiritual wellness. We provide care through 3 delivery methods: medical clinics, retreats, and educational training. Since we started back in 2011, we have been able to reach veterans in all 50 states and have served over 3,000 veterans through the Be Resilient program. Being resilient is a multifaceted and complex issue. We know that to find a lasting solution, we have to address the whole warrior. Many challenges cannot be solved by providing the treatments and modalities of just one component, but by tackling them all. Now, we've expanded our services to include law enforcement and first responders. Together, we can make a lasting impact in the lives of warriors across the nation. To learn more, visit our website at sofmissions.org.
For your post assignment, all units proceed to your post assignment.
All right. Welcome back.
MisFit Nation. MisFit Nation. The MisFit Nation show.
We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their stories to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the MisFit Nation. If you're a musician or an actor, our audience need to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share your tips with the MisFit Nation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you are a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and show how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you are a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and share your story with the MisFit Nation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or feel embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, welcome to the MisFit Nation show. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app. Also on our YouTube channel at @the_MisFit Nation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date on our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show!
All right. Welcome back to the MisFit Nation show, your Sunday after dinner edition. We know you have other places you can be and other podcasts you can be listening to, but you chose to be with us, and we appreciate you for that. You will get your frequent flyer miles after this. We have no bad news to spread tonight, so this would be a pretty straightforward show tonight. We have a great guest. I was on his show a couple weeks ago, the Just a Dude podcast. He's a former first responder who worked as a law enforcement officer for 13 years, as an EMT for 6 years, and as a 911 dispatcher for 2 years. He was glutton for punishment on all sides of that. He is a true misfit that he switched careers midlife and now works in tech. As I said, he's also the host of the great podcast, Just a Dude podcast. So without further ado, let's welcome in Nathan Bollman to the Misfit Nation show. Welcome, Nathan.
Hey, Rich, thanks for having me. I'm glad to finally be on your show.
Definitely. I mean, it took a couple weeks, but we got you here. And
yeah. Hey, that's a good thing for you, though, right? Got the guests lined up.
Got them lined up, knocking them out, stack them up. It's like T-ball. You get them on there, and it's easy hit. Small target, hit them. And I'm glad that we were able to get this connection. And I think when I was on your show, we made that good connection there. And it's always good to do the reciprocity and get you back on this side.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And just hearing your story, it's definitely something that I resonated with, even though, you and your military and me with my law enforcement, me being a little more local. But yeah, it totally resonated. We've definitely had some of the same experiences, even though in different continents.
Definitely. Continents, time zones, it's all the same.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Nathan, I just gave basically a 2-sentence overview of you. If you don't mind, tell the Misfit Nation a little bit more about you from as far back as you want to go to how you got on this winding road to Just a Dude podcast.
Yeah. So, the idea, I'll start with the idea of the podcast and then show you where it came from. But for me, someone asked me one time, how do you explain yourself? Or, how would you identify yourself in one word? And I was like, man, I'm just a dude, trying to be humble, trying to work as hard as I can to do what I need to do, just to get by in life. And I learned that from my parents. And, really, I had a good upbringing. My father was a police officer. My grandfather was a police officer. My great-grandfather was a police officer. So that all ran in the family. My mother worked her butt off. She was the first female custodian with one of the local school systems just to make ends meet. So I knew what that grip took to do, and get a family by. And I mean, they really sacrificed for everything, so that really gave me that foundation to say, hey, no matter what I do, I'm going to work for it, And so obviously law enforcement was in that background for years, and hearing Dad, Grandpa talk about those stories, it gets you interested in it. And my whole life I grew up with it. So I knew, even though my dad was very discouraging, he's like, do not be a cop. It's the worst job in the world. He's like, don't do it. Do something else, be a trash man. I don't care. But he finally gave in. I went through the police academy. I actually got to work. I had the privilege to work with my dad for like the last 2 years of his career, and actually drove him around because he was the second in command. So I drove him around on his last day, so it's like his low chauffeur. But, I loved being a cop. I had some ups and downs with that. I worked with several different departments for a span of 13 years. I had the opportunity to, not only work patrol, but work juvenile diversion, where we could, first-time juvenile offenders, they'd come see me. I'd get them in a program, try to keep them out of the system and on the straight and narrow. Did a lot of community policing, which was great as well. And but I did that for a long time until I got laid off. You'd never think you get laid off as a cop. I mean, right. It's like, how do you get laid off in the military, right? But, I got laid off in 2009 when everything was just going great and fantastic. And I had to work part-time. So, as I was working part-time at one job, I picked up another job doing security, and they offered some tuition, reimbursement. So I started going back to college. After several years of working part-time at like 2 police jobs, I finally found a job working for here locally in Ohio, the Cleveland Clinic, and did a lot of their patient access stuff. And that's what kind of switched me when I said, wow, you know what, I can make decent money. Because believe it or not, you probably know this, but cops don't make a lot of money. I mean, I was a full-time cop and I was making $17 an hour. In 2009. So it's not a lucrative career. But then when I found out I could make the same amount of money, not have to work weekends and get my nights off, I was like, this isn't a bad idea. So I went, I went from that transitioned me into more like the healthcare setting, which, I've always had this desire to serve and help others. And so I went into this patient access to try to get patients scheduled when they need to get scheduled, started working with technology with them. And worked with them, became an analyst, and started analyzing patient financial accounts for insurance. Then got laid off again. I was like, man, I'm batting the layoff here. So in 2018, I got laid off from an analyst job, and some guy that who's still a mentor to me today, his name's John. He took a chance on me to be what you call a business analyst / scrum master. And that's really just a fancy way of saying a project manager, but you do it for tech. And so he took a chance on me. I've always been fascinated with tech, but never really did anything with it. But I learned so much through him that he actually got me into a program where I got a second master's degree in information technology management. So that really burst my career. I moved forward in that, built some really amazing things to where I am now of just being, I'm a Scrum Master still, senior Scrum Master with a small startup company, but we're building some AI stuff that's making people's lives a little bit easier, and we're trying to prevent bills from going to patients that they don't need.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's outstanding. And the transition from being a police officer to the medical side, I'm sure that was a big transition for you. We talk about transition on MisFit Nation a lot because a lot of our guests and our audience were either military or first responders, and transitioning from either one of those back to the real world to the civilian side. And in your case, going from one part of first responder to another and
yeah.
to yet another. I'm sure that had to be a little bit of hurdles for you to get through it, but having familiarity was all right.
Yeah, I got to tell you so a lot of that time, even that transition into technology, I was still working as a police officer part-time. I had become an EMT. I did that for 6 years, but worked mostly with private companies. So, EMT, police officer, kind of the same. You're out there helping people. You see some gruesome stuff, and does some things to you. 911 dispatching was a totally different ball game. I mean, from the police side, you're dealing with everything, but you're dealing with police, fire, and EMS. And these people are calling you and don't know what's going on. And that took a special kind of skill for me, because I'm used to being there, setting the tone and trying to make sure that everybody's being safe. And now there's, it's a little bit different when you're behind that phone call. So that transition was crazy. But what was even worse was going from a full-time cop to working in a business setting. Totally different setting for sure. It took I'm still getting used to it. I still find times where like the old cop, kicks in and I'm like, just do it,
Reaching for the taser. Hey,
yeah, exactly.
Don't stop that. Please
Exactly.
stop.
But it is, yeah. And I have to assume it's the same for the military too, because I know a lot of folks that, I've worked with, and especially in the police force, that have come out of the military and joined police. Even that transition is different.
Yes.
That I've heard from them talking, just coming into civilian life, especially, a lot of the folks that I worked with were, just like you, where, they've actually seen combat and been over in Iraq and Afghanistan for these different things. And then they come back and, I think they did a better job with the soldiers coming back than they did in Vietnam, but there's still a long way they can go. But even transitioning from a police officer after, 13 years to being in the business role is still weird. My wife and I still go out to eat. I still got to have my front face in the door. You know what I mean? I got to be able to see everybody in the place. It's like it's been, it's been 6 years since I put a uniform on, but it still happens.
You still identify all the exits when you walk in.
Yep.
Which way to push her to get out of there in safety.
Exactly. I mean, that's just it's something that gets so instilled in you. And what's different now too is like when I go to make a decision, when you're law enforcement or EMT, it's a split-second decision that you got to make. Like you don't have a choice. Well, now it's like, hey, guess what? You got time. You can take a day and make a decision. And I'm like, I'm still learning that after 6 years of being out of it.
You can take a little breath now in between.
Exactly. Not every decision that I make is going to affect somebody's life or death situation,
There's not as much on the line now. And that's what I was going to say. As a law enforcement professional, most people you meet is on their worst day.
Absolutely.
That's the nature of the business. It's hard to not have that sentence come out, but you guys meet most people on their worst day. And that's the impression you have. Like they always say the first impression is the best impression. It's not always for you guys, because you might meet that person when they're at rock bottom and everything has gone wrong for them for days on end. And now they're meeting you and now everything is wrong. So how did you learn to deal with that, to try to maybe compartmentalize, knowing that is their worst day? How do I just keep this humane and treat them as the human they are and try to make everything right?
Yeah, I think I had a lot of good expertise coming from my father because he did a lot of that stuff and actually working. When I first became a police officer, we had here in Ohio was called a non-commissioned officer because I was 20 years old. I couldn't carry a handgun, so that afforded me the skills to learn how to use my mouth because I wasn't carrying a gun. You know what I mean? And so you gotta learn how to work with folks. And luckily, when I first started out, I was in a very small town, and it's funny the transition. It was a 5 square mile town. I could work a 16-hour shift and never get a call. And then the next place I went to when I started working full time was a 5 square mile town, and I couldn't go an hour without a call. So two different things. But yeah, working with people. And that was one of the things I always instilled in trainees was like, nobody calls you when they're having a good day. So you got to assume when you get there, it's the worst day of their life and they're going to be MFing you and whatever. And you just got to know that it's the worst day of their life. So let them speak, keep your safety, keep your distance like you need to do, but, talk to them, logically, just like you would want to be talked to if you're in a, and I don't want to say irrational state, but if you're in a state of mind that you normally wouldn't be in.
Right.
And so the gift of gab had definitely helped me out, helped my behind once or twice.
And sometimes it's just that calming voice will de-escalate that situation so much. And I mean, sometimes there's no chance for the police officer just to de-escalate because that person just is so far outside their normal.
Especially if like you get drugs involved, or even alcohol. They say you can never argue with a drunk, So it's you get those things involved, and sometimes it doesn't matter what you say. A fight's going to happen if a fight's going to happen, But luckily, I was very lucky that I was able to talk to a lot of people. I even had people in the town because it was such a small town where I'd arrest them Friday night. They'd go into jail for domestic violence. I'd see them Saturday morning because I'm doing a switchback and, waving to them, stop and talk to them, ask them how the food was, and it's like they're like, oh, no hard feelings. Sorry, I was just drunk again. It's like, yeah, I know, but thanks for keeping me in a job,
I was keeping other people employed first, then I kept doing jobs. Thanks.
Exactly.
And at least as you were a police officer, you could work that case, go home. But I think as the 9/11 operator, you don't know the outcome right away of what happens when you talk to that person when they're in distress. You hear the whole story, and then you're thinking, what can go wrong, what can go right, and then it's the police officer or the firefighter that has to go there. How did you transition that mentally?
That was, what? I think by that time I was probably so used to working, because of EMT and, all that. I've seen so much stuff. So when it came up, it was just like after anything, it just became natural, which is unfortunate. But it's like all these things. Now, I was fortunate because I worked for the 911 center I worked for was for university here, but it was right in Akron, in the city of Akron in Ohio. And it was right after they had unfortunately had to shoot an unarmed black person. And there was just, they had protests and people trying to riot and things like that. And that was a little difficult because for me, the hardest part about dispatching was my officers and, firefighters stuff were out there because I'd send them to a call and I'd want to be there, and now I'm sitting here, I'm stuck in a chair just like I am here and I can't do anything about it. And it's like, well, I guess I can just make sure that I can run whatever information they need when they need it,
Definitely. You said you got to train some officers as you were coming up too. What are some of the tips and tricks that maybe your dad taught you that you were able to pass to them as they were about to go on the streets as well?
Some of the things that I learned was, number one is you're always going home. It doesn't matter, no matter what your gift is or if you got to fight with somebody, whatever, you are always going to go home. And then your number two thing was always make sure anybody that's working with you can go home too. But your first, yourself first. And so that's something I always instilled in officers was, number one, you've got to make sure that you are safe at all times. And just, it's unfortunately, we've got to say this, but think that almost everybody's trying to kill you. And it's unfortunate you got to say that, but you just can't trust anybody, and, you do trust people that you see in the community and things like that, but you just never put your guard down, and so that was the second thing. And the third thing I always say is get to know your people, drive around with your window down, stop, talk to the kids, talk to the people, that are mowing their lawn, whatever it may be, because those are the people, as they get to know you, they might start giving you tips or they might start helping you out with things. And, if not, they become part of the community. And then like when they got rid of our entire police department, they were up in arms about it. But the fact of the matter is it was a poorly run village and they ran out of money.
Wow. And I mean, at least you were able to bounce back and find
Yeah.
something for that, thankfully. And,
Yeah, it's definitely, you know, I don't recommend getting laid off to anybody, especially more than once. I'm sure there's people out there that have done it. I know my wife's dad was a UAW worker, so he's been out of work more than once with all the, strikes and stuff they go on. But yeah, it's definitely not something that's fun. But if you keep a positive mind and can bounce back and, find something to do and, pivot, I think that was the biggest key for me. Was my mom said something to me one time, and she was just being a mom, but she's like, Nate, you're too smart to be a cop. She's like, you've got more brains than that. And I don't know why I did, but it stuck. She's like, just go back to school. And I did. And, the rest is history. Now I get, I work from home and, get the opportunity to work with some of the greatest minds and data scientists that I've ever met in my life. And if you were to ask me this 20 years ago, if that's what I'd be doing, I would have been like, you're out of your mind. I'm going to be a cop the rest of my life.
outstanding. Yeah, definitely. You said you were on your dad's last ride. So were you in the car when he did his final code call to say
I was. Yep.
How was that?
Yeah. It wasn't as big back then as it is, you see now where everybody puts it on social media, but you got to remember this was early. What was that? 2005. So, social media was still kind of new and all that. But yeah, it was nice. They had a nice cake, nice retirement party for them later in the day. But it was, he put 27 years in, I think. So he was ready, and he broke his neck on the job. And, he goes to the retirement board and they said, he goes, I want to retire. And they go, it says here in your file that you broke your neck. And he's like, yeah. And they go, you need to take a disability. He's like, I'm not disabled. And they're like, no, you should take a disability.
I'm not.
Yeah, he did. They talked him into it, but it works out for him because now it's tax free. Yeah.
They probably should have started with that sale.
Exactly.
We do have a question from the audience, Ray. I think you kind of answered it, Ray, but I'll let you answer the first question as well. This is from Clemmy Trog. What was the biggest challenge you faced when transitioning from public safety to the tech industry? Thank you, Clement Trog. Yeah,
that was no, I'll answer that again because it was the biggest challenge was, knowing that everything you did wasn't life or death decision, or wasn't going to put somebody's safety in jeopardy. That was the hardest thing, to just learn to slow down and realize that you don't have to solve everything for somebody right this second. And, once I learned that you could slow down, some of the other things were like, when people start talking back to you, say you're on the phone with somebody and they start talking back to you, and that cop mentality of trying to be in control of the situation comes in. That was a very hard part too, to say, you don't need to be in control of this conversation.
I'm no longer the boss.
Yes.
I can sit back. And that's something that a lot of military people have problems with. And which is why a lot of military don't last in their first job out of the military. Like something they know what they were going into. They think that everything has to be done now. If you're given a list of tasks in the military, you have to do it all that day or in that moment. But in the civilian world, you have each task is, say, this one is X amount of hours. You have to do that one, and you have to learn that flow. And I'm sure that was even a thing you had to learn as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, just learning, and especially like routines and, realizing that I got bored really quick, doing that because it was the same thing over and over again. That's the one thing I miss about, law enforcement for sure, was that I never knew what was going to happen that day. I didn't know if someone was going to call me to get a bat out of their closet, or if, I was going to scrape somebody off the road. I didn't know what was going to happen. And it was, not a lot of people can live like that. I loved it just because you could go from, 0 to 100 and back down to like -50, wondering why you're still out here.
Why did I make it and not them?
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's transitions definitely was hard. I think it's probably much easier than what you guys have to do when you transition out of the military. Just because of how structured that is, at least I was still living in the civilian world, so I had some of that, but still that stuff carries with you. It
definitely does. And since you mentioned getting the bats out of the closet, and now I have to hear that story of you getting the call to get a bat out of the closet. Is it like the Great Outdoors with John Candy? And Dan?
I wish. I wish, but I was the type of guy. I actually went to the call because I knew I was going to go there, and it was a huge, well, it looked huge, of course, right? And so I'm sitting there, and they're like, "Look, there's a bat," and I was like, "Sure is. You should call an exterminator." I was like, "Sorry, nothing I could do." I was like, "Do you want me to shoot it?" I was like, "No," and I'm like, "I'm not getting rabies."
I'm not going to be hanging from the ceiling tonight.
Exactly. No vampire bat on me.
Was there any other crazy calls you had to go on?
Oh my goodness. I've been so many, I mean, a lot that have to do with alcohol. Like I remember, all right, I'll give you the first story. I'm released out of my first full-time job. I've gone through my field training. I've been a police officer before, but I'm through my field training. Well, the chief's out riding around. I'm like, he's off duty. I'm working midnights. He's out riding around because he just likes to stir up trouble for everybody. And he goes, "Hey, you should come over here and check out this van. I think they might be drunk." And I'm like, all right. So I was right around the corner. I come down with the cruiser, and sure enough, he's weaving all over the place. So I hit the overheads. Now, mind you, this is my first day on my own at this police department. And he takes off. And I'm like, oh, great. And the chief's behind me. So he's monitoring everything, So I chase this van. He stops. He gets out to run. Well, he didn't put the van in park, and he ran towards my cruiser, which I had stopped, and then went between my cruiser and the van rolled backward and pinned him between my cruiser and the van. And I was like, so I didn't have to run far to catch this guy. But yeah, he was drunk. He stole the van, and he was 15 years old. And he just ruined his entire career because his kneecap was shattered because he forgot to put the van in park.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, boy, this is a great way. I was like, and when I saw that kid disappear, it was like my first day on the job, and I just killed somebody. Oh my God. Yeah.
Paperwork.
But yeah. Well, and the funny thing is too, back then, the chief's like, "Hey, did you get that on camera?" Cameras were relatively new in the cars at that time. And I was like, only the sergeants could change the VHS tape. And he didn't do it that day. So I was like, no, it wasn't.
Man.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that was a transition in law enforcement, which actually was great. I believe it or not, was video cameras, because I know when they first came in, I worked without them my first 5 years. My dad worked without them for his whole career, and he was like adamant against them. His like, people, they just need to trust us. And I was like, it doesn't work that way anymore, Dad. And but when the cameras came out, I was like, you're a little worrisome because sometimes you slip a bad word here or there, But I found that the cameras were actually a godsend. I mean, they caught more of what we did right than what we ever did wrong.
They clear a lot of police officers' names.
They do,
especially right now when if you go on TikTok or anything, you'll see half the story from the person trying to say something happened to try to stir up an issue, and then
exactly
the police officer or I guess the agency has to.
Yeah, yeah. I see where you're going there. Yeah, Rich. Yep.
Yeah, at least the full body cam to say, hey, this is what actually happened. Now you can.
And that was even crazy when I was done wearing the uniform. Body cams were still a new thing. So departments were still. So I never actually carried a body cam, but we had them in the cruisers, and to go from VHS to digital. Now I feel like an old man.
Went from VHS tape that your sergeant had to change to now
exactly.
It's on the loop all day.
Yep.
And,
exactly.
They're actually now, as soon as the officer steps out of the car, now I think they turn it on. So it's like motion.
Yeah, I know, because I know a lot of guys that when I was working 911 dispatch, they had the body cameras, and a lot of the guys would be like, oh man, they'd have to send a note to the chief, delete, minute this from this because I was in the bathroom and forgot it was on. You don't want to see. I was like, I'm glad I didn't have that because I would have forgot all the time.
Don't want to see that. I think I ate some bad kimchi. Yeah,
exactly.
Be a bad day. Another question come in. Popped up. Dave Bob, at Dave Bob. Which skills from your law enforcement and EMT or dispatch career have been most valuable as you transitioned into tech? Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Bob.
So. Yeah, that's a great question, because believe it or not, the organization skills and the ability to prioritize, so when you're a law enforcement officer, you might get 3 or 4 calls at a time. And if you're the supervisor or the acting supervisor, you have to be able to prioritize those things. And if you only have, you got 4 cars or 4 calls pending and only 2 officers, well, which calls do you go to? So that was one of the biggest thing is how to prioritize the work that you need to do and really look at the long run to see, okay, where am I going to have the most benefit, in this action? And that translated to business and tech and everything is just, being able to prioritize things easily was a huge save to me. And it was probably why I'm doing what I am today.
Definitely is. I think those skills are perishable, of course, and tech, like you said earlier, like your dad was 100% against the cameras. Probably still thinks they're voodoo dolls. And like we gave our dad an iPad so he could, do FaceTime with his granddaughters. And that thing, I bought it for him, and I thought it was doing great. And I went up there to visit him. It was under his TV stand, like just rolled under there because
it's like trying to keep it level, or
you don't want that around. It causes hatred. So you don't want that out there. So he still has the flip phone from the AARP, and I'm like, come on, Dad.
Oh, that's fun. I got my parents' smartphones a few years ago and just threw them on my plan because I always wanted to make sure they had, they could get a hold of us. And my dad's like, I don't want no smartphone. He was very anti-computer and stuff like. And my mom's like, oh, I want the smartphone. My dad can use the phone better than my mom can at this point. And I'm like, what happened, Dad? He's like, well, you gotta get with the times, I guess.
So what if if you got to go speak to a high school now, and then the youngsters ask you, hey, what advice would you give us as we want to get into law enforcement? What would you tell them?
Man, I don't know that I could honestly say good things for people to go in law enforcement today. It's really sad to say that. I mean, when I went in, I think that people still had a little bit of respect for for the police officers and stuff that were around, but it's just, I mean, to go what they go through and for as little amount of pay that they make, it's just, to me, it's not worth it. But if you are going to go into it and, you can't be talked out of it by me or your own dad, like I wasn't talked out of it, I would say make sure that you have the people skills first, because the worst cops that I ever worked with were the ones that didn't have the people skills and would just come in and try to rouse someone up right off the bat. And if you're just there because you want to have a badge and be gun heavy, then that is not the right job for you, especially in today's climate.
100%. And now, as you said, unthankful, ungrateful, or unrewarding job now, I guess, because everything they do is under this microscope now. A police officer, it's like working in a fishbowl. Everything they do is out there for the world as soon as it happens. And it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. You have to prove yourself correct in the public eye before anyone else will believe you. So I think it's a lot of walking on eggshells. In some cases, that causes the officer either their life or they get wounded or hurt because they had to overthink something before actually committing.
Exactly. I think, some of the things that they're facing today of like, oh, how is this going to look? Right. Like when you take down a suspect, it's not going to look good. I mean, it's just not. If you go hands on with somebody and they're fighting with you, it's not going to look good no matter what you do, And I think that having that stigma on the back of your mind, like, oh, how's this going to look? Is somebody, is there a camera over here? Am I going to do this right or do that wrong? I think is going to cause inaction. And then not safety for these officers, because they're going to have all that stuff on their mind now instead of just focusing on the job and making sure everybody's safe.
Right. And that's something like when we were overseas on every patrol brief, part of that patrol brief was don't get on CNN today.
Exactly. Yeah. You want to go home, stay out of the news.
Yeah. Don't be on CNN. That's all I beg of you. Don't be on CNN. We'll be all right. Everything else will wash up. We'll be all right.
Yeah. And it's just, I mean, just since that time, I mean, from my time starting in early 2000 and, coming through to today, and even looking back at how, like it was when my dad was there, and then even his dad telling me stories. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but my grandfather, right, his generation were thugs. They did not take crap off of anybody. If somebody talked to the cops back then, they got a billy club in the mouth. It was a different thing, but for some reason it didn't happen all the time, because I think people respected law enforcement a little bit better and, wanted to have a good community to live in.
And I think that goes back to what you said earlier about when you were telling officers to get to know their area and drive with the windows down. When your grandfather was a cop, when your dad probably started out, they probably walked the beat too. So they
Yeah, my
actually
grandfather did. Yeah, yeah.
community police, so people knew them and they were part of the adults in the neighborhood. So if the kid was doing something wrong, he was just another father figure that could correct
Yep.
him and make things
Exactly. Yeah,
right.
exactly. And they corrected them back then.
A lot of
You know?
corrections.
Yeah, I mean to see just to hear like some stories and stuff from when my dad, worked in the, 70s, 80s, 90s, until he retired in I think '05. Him just the way it changed for him was just amazing to see that. He'd tell me stories. He's like, "Oh, when I first got on," he goes, "I had to lock my chief in the jail because he'd show up drunk and I couldn't let him get in a car." And it's like, wow, that's definitely something you wouldn't do today,
No, you'd have to
But
video.
yeah, he tells stories. He said you'd be on a city line and you get a call for a drunk lane in the roadway. And he said, I showed up and it was, they were laying right there on the line. And he goes, I see an officer from the other jurisdiction rolling him into our city. And he goes, so I waited till he left and rolled him back and then called on the radio and said he was in their city.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, different things, obviously, you wouldn't, the guy was taken care of course, but could you imagine somebody doing that today?
Oh, they'd be in jail immediately. Frank Smith chimed in. It sounds like Mayberry.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's outstanding. Thanks, Frank. This might be Deborah Bollman. Is this your wife?
Yeah, that's my wife. Yep.
Ooh, that Nathan is hot. Can I have his number? Yeah, there you go.
We talked about it beforehand, Rich. At least one of our wives got on there.
Told her she'd put a joke on there or something.
Yeah.
My wife didn't like it, so she's on too. So it's good.
Oh,
They're
nice.
They're both helping us out and supporting us and making us laugh.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
I got to
Deborah.
tell you what, if there's one thing to say for where I've been, my wife and I just celebrated 20 years this year, last month June. And, she's been with me for 27 years and I could not have done all of these things, especially these transitions and these pivots without her and without her sane voice, keeping me sane,
Definitely. And mine, we just went over 31 years in May. So
yeah, congratulations.
The whole career, all deployments, and she was a rock. She took care of the house. All I had to do was come home and in one piece or sort of one piece, and
yeah.
So she was the one that kept us.
Yeah, physically we usually came home in one piece, but mentally that might be a different story, right, Rich?
I'm not missing any parts, but I'm missing something.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I said my hair probably, I started losing my hair in my 20s, and it was, I guess, probably all that stress from being a cop,
It starts running away. It's not a fade anymore. It's a run.
No, it is. I just shave it because there's no point.
I would, but she doesn't let me. So until that flag comes up, I can't do it. So.
Yeah.
I got another question. This is from Daisy Cutchu. What advice would you give to someone considering a major midlife career change? I guess just like you did.
Oh, that's tough. So, for me, I was kind of forced on me, so I didn't have a choice really in the matter. Because when I got laid off, I had to think about what I was going to do. And back then in '09, police weren't hiring like today. So that's let me throw that out there. I get like the city of Akron would have a test. They would have 350 people show up to take the test, but we're only hiring 2 people. So it was very competitive back then, where now you could probably walk into the police station and if you don't use drugs and don't have a criminal background, they probably hire you, But the biggest thing that I would say is, focus. For me, a lot in my life was always my career, especially in law enforcement, EMT. It was always very career focused. And then I learned at some point that you got to take care of yourself and you got to, focus on your family because they won't always be there. Careers will come and go, but you only get one chance at a family. And so for me, sitting back, focusing, on my family, on my wife, and then just sitting back and say, what do I enjoy doing other than what I was doing that I could get into, and that's where I went into my second master's degree, was to get into that, IT tech, or the tech side of it, was to get that education. Do you need it? By no means. I'm telling you folks out there, you do not need a formal degree to get into tech. There's certifications out there that you can take. There's, mini camps that you could take for coding. A lot of the best minds that I've worked with in technology have never had formal training.
I hope that satisfies the question. Cuts Daisy cuts you, and you don't come cut us. That'd be great.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned we haven't really talked a lot about the podcast, so let's talk
Oh,
about Just a Dude podcast, and let's tell the Misfit Nation about Just a Dude, how you came up with the idea, and where you see it going in the next few years.
yeah, it was definitely a few years in the making. You know, it was one of those things where I think I started out where I just like I was hearing all these podcasts and like listening to all these stars and stuff. You know, you listen to throw out the big names like Rogan and Theo Von, all those folks. And I was like, those are fun. They're entertaining. They're nice to listen to. But like, what about voices for just normal folks, like normal everyday folks that are always out there grinding, working their way up from the bottom, trying to just make a decent living for themselves and just, kind of go through the motion. And so I came up with it. I started doing just like little things like single shows of like about the Constitution and things like that, just to kind of get the legs under me. And then I discovered Podfest. I went to Podfest at the beginning of this last year and got hooked up with Podmatch, and I found some really great guests on there. And, like like yourself, Rich. And, we got hooked up and I started interviewing these guests, and I realized, wow, this is an opportunity to have a show, to have normal people come and share their extraordinary stories, So like yourself, how you came in, and when I don't want to give it away because Rich is more on the ball than I am, but Rich is, I think October you're coming out, right, Rich, for your episode. But, but yeah, it's just so great to hear stories, because I like to see people that, if they feel like they're stuck in a job or feel like they're stuck in a situation or thinking about doing something and just like, oh, well, I'm just a normal person. Well, guess what? The first person to ever do anything was a normal person. And right. So I share these stories and talk to these guests to try to bring it, folks on to inspire other people to just be a little bit better for themselves. If you want to try being an author, here, listen to some of the writers that come on. If you want to, if you're looking at the military, here's Rich. He had a military experience, which we talked about, but he's also doing other things and now got your own show, and so that's really what it's kind of grown into. And I really love it. And then I just do a little short news episode on Fridays where I just go through the top 10 headlines from the rest of the week, just because that's something I enjoy. People like them, but I like the guest episodes. It's really great. But yeah, that's really what we do over there.
And you on your website, it says 118 episodes. Is that where you're at now?
Yeah. Believe it or not, it's crazy that I've done that many already.
You had some great guests. A lot of them I've had as well. Terry Brown, one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, show. Terry's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Pearl Snap Tactical Podcast. Good dude. Deborah Heiser, awesome woman.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and that's, that's one of the things too. Yeah. I was just going to say, not to shamelessly plug them, but, Podmatch has been really good for guests. If any podcasters out there listening, I definitely recommend that, because that's how Rich and I got hooked up. And man, it's been, here we are 2 shows down, right?
Yeah. 2 shows and 2 hours of chatting with each other.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I've been shamelessly plugging Podmatch in the comments all night. So you could.
Nice.
Thanks. So I get some referral credits.
There you go.
You got to do that. That's the only way we live. But
yep. But yeah, it's it's been a nice ride. I mean, I'm in, like what, 9 months now, which has been, not too bad, but it's been a good ride. I've had a lot of good following. I'd never expected it to kind of take off the way it has. And, for being in 8 months and having several thousand downloads is pretty amazing to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure if you looked at the analytics, it's hard. You'll see that you're in all over the world too, not just in the United States. So it's awesome.
Yeah, and I have to thank some of those guests that are all over the world. I know I had a couple of guests on from Australia, so I get a good listenership from there.
I think some of my first ones I had 2 authors from New Zealand that really helped me out a lot, and they were great guests. That was all audio, and that's how we started. And it's a good ride to start audio, and then I was told gave the advice to go video by Nate Palmer, one of my guests. He said, "Man, you should do video; it'd be much better." And from there, I just stayed video, and then started going live. So it's a good ride.
It was. I only wanted to do audio, and then I learned that really, if you want to promote, you got to do social media, show your ugly mug, and I'm like, nobody wants to see this face. I don't even think my wife wants to see it anymore.
A great faced radio.
Exactly. That's what it was made for.
My brother's asking, I know the answer, but now do you go live like this or record and then edit and post?
Yeah, no, I record and then edit and post. I don't do a lot of editing. And actually, I got that a lot of that from you, Rich, when we talked, because I started backing off on the editing and just letting it go natural. The only thing I take out is generally when I speak and say and write about 1,000 times. So
As long as it's not in a row, it's okay.
exactly.
Do you think you're going to start going live in the future, or you want to keep the way you're doing now, the flow you have now? I mean, it works.
Yeah, I think the flow that I have now for now, maybe next year we'll look at something. Right now this is still kind of the hobby phase for me, so it's not like it's, bringing in cash and I'm going to be quitting my job tomorrow, but yeah, I do. This is the first live that I've been on, and this is actually kind of fun.
Yeah, I have a good time doing the lives, especially with the audience interaction and such. Frank said his family is from Poland, so it means maybe they're listening as well, I guess.
Oh, nice.
My brother said he also put in there that he was with Dad on Thursday. He was talking about the Wayback Machine there. He's in Jersey City with a cop friend. He got a call and had Dad our dad went with him on the call and told him, hey, stay in the neighborhood. Stay in the car. It's a bad neighborhood.
Yep. That sounds about right. I remember I went before I started doing stuff, at police work. I went on a ride along in the city of Akron here, which is it's a pretty decent city here in Ohio, a decent size. And yeah, they would never let me get out of the car. They're like, you can't get out of the car, period. You just sit there.
There's this thing called liability, and we don't want it right now.
So. Exactly.
Pop in one last question. It just popped in.
Sure.
Liza Free, I guess. Liza 7REER33. I'll say Liza Free. That sounds about right. Looking back, what moments in your first responder career taught you the most about resilience?
I think, probably the best thing that ever happened to me was being laid off, because that taught me what resiliency is. Back then, getting laid off from a $17 an hour job, which at the time seemed like a lot of money. And even looking back, it definitely was not. Losing that type of money when you're not making a lot was tough. And so I just knew that I've got to keep the bills paid. I got to keep the roof over our house, and my wife's working too, but I got to make sure that I contribute. And so that was the one thing that I learned. And the grit from my parents that I saw from them through my entire life, was just work. It doesn't matter what comes your way. You got to work to make ends meet no matter what happens. You're not going to be a lazy slug. You're not going to live off the government. You got to get a job. And for until I was 38 years old, I worked at least 2 jobs, one full-time job and at least one part-time job. So, it's definitely the resiliency and the grit was there. I'm glad I don't do that anymore.
So you had that hustle in you for a long time. So.
I did. And now that hustle is gone, Rich.
Well, age it's an equation. It's like the
it is
hustle and lazy scale comes together.
Yep.
Hustle and
I was built for lazy, though. I'll tell you that.
Everything slows down a little bit as we get older. And we have to understand that we're not 20 anymore, and it's hard to do a lot of things at once. Even though a lot of us still do, and you're still doing a lot of things at one time. So
that's true.
And maybe some of the younger generation can take tips from you as well. And,
it was that was a hard transition too, Rich. Just saying, there was when I did a little bit of management in the IT stuff, was some of the younger folks, they definitely work differently than the rest of us.
Yes. Well, they have a different mindset, a different upbringing. Their upbringing is on a tablet or a cell phone.
Yeah.
Yours is being outside until the sun goes down.
Exactly.
They don't know what that means. And it's hard to get them to come out of their house and stay off that little device and do the things.
Oh my goodness. Yep.
Yeah. Without letting the two bleed together.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, it's one thing that, like, I talk to my wife all the time. We've got some young families in the neighborhood, and like the kids next to us and the kids down the street are always outside playing. And I'm always like super excited about it, 'cause I'm like, yes, they're living their best life. They're not stuck to a screen.
There's real ones out there still.
Yeah, exactly. We got good parents. We've got good kids. Here we go.
It's all going to come together again. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Last night we had a thing in the neighborhood, and we have only about 50 houses in our community. So we had a little food truck come in for the last Saturday of summer before the kids go back to school this week. And this one little girl had this awesome little like go-kart thing And it's like sat down almost like a Formula One car. She had a helmet on, and I was riding my golf cart, and I mean, she was right on me. I was doing 20 miles an hour. She was on me at 20 miles an hour, and I was like, I need some things to ride around the neighborhood too now. Great.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've been seeing that in the town here too, is golf carts coming on the roads and stuff. And I was like,
That little
wow.
thing she had though, a little F1 for kids. I think that's amazing. We didn't have that when I was a kid. We had the green machine and big wheel. No
Yep,
battery.
big wheel. Absolutely. Doing your skids and your big wheel if you could get tire traction on the front.
And flipping over it and getting scrapes.
Yep.
Bleeding because you get in trouble for getting blood in the house. All the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. How dare you bleed over my rug?
Exactly.
You know where to bleed. It's on the tile right in front of the door.
Do not bleed in my house. I just cleaned it. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. That's like the joke of the lady that killed her husband for walking on the wet floor, and the police are sitting there and they're like, well, are you going to arrest her? Well, the floor's not dry yet. We're waiting for it to dry. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I've seen that meme. I think I've seen that meme about 7 times this week. I laugh every time just seeing it.
Yep, I remember that was my mom, man. If she was mopping the kitchen floor, you put a foot on there, you're gonna get a paddle across the rear end. You knew better.
All my hard work. I can't clean it again. Ah.
Yep.
So we just blazed through 50 minutes, Nathan. That was awesome. Again, natural talking. The two of us were conversationalists. I guess. So that's
I would say so. Yeah.
I usually end my show with 2 questions to the guest. The first one's the easy one, softball question. What's the best way for the audience to get in contact with you if they want to maybe chat with you like we did or have you on their show?
Yeah, so you can, if you want me to be a guest on your show, reach out to me through podmatch.com. You'll be able to find me there, or you can hit me up on my website, which is justadudepodcast.com. It's all one word, justadudepodcast.com.
Awesome. I'll put that across the bottom of the screen right now. I had that on here. Yeah, there it is. It's coming across the bottom, streaming for you.
Nice.
And the second question, what's 3 things the MisFit Nation can start doing tomorrow to make themselves better humans?
Number 1 is be easy on yourself. No one's harder on us than ourselves. So, give yourself a break every now and then. Not everything is going to work out. Number 2 is it's never too late. It's never too late for you to change trajectory of your life. Whether it's you're dealing with an addiction, you have a crappy job, you want to go on to something else. It's never too late. You could be 20, 50, 100. It doesn't matter. If you've got the will, there's a way. And the third thing is, don't put everything into work. Life is more than work. So don't even worry about work. It'll worry about itself.
That's outstanding. I like that last one the most. Because I told this to one of my coworkers that it's basically the same thing you said earlier. Work will be here tomorrow. Your family is everything. Stay with your family.
Yep.
Be with them.
Yeah, there's only so much time you get with them.
Right. And that's something a lot of people need to understand. So that's awesome. Those 3 things are awesome. They're in the chat right now, so you guys can't say you didn't see them or hear them. They are there. Nate, thanks for doing the flip of the mic with me. And real quick with us, that was awesome. Any final thoughts for MisFit Nation?
No, Rich, I love the show. I've been listening to it. I don't usually catch the lives because I'm usually getting ready for bed right now. I know I'm a loser. No, I'm kidding. But I usually get tired at late, but I usually catch them on the replays and stuff. But I love being a guest on the show. The live is a really cool fact. I love the guests, shooting in some questions. That was fantastic. I loved it. So just, for everybody out there, definitely give Rich and the MisFit Nation a follow and a like if you can. Give them a review. And if you want to check me out, you can go on justadudepodcast.com or anywhere you can find podcasts. You can find me.
Outstanding. Thank you, Nathan, for hanging out with us tonight. Go back to your wife and tell her thanks for joining us as well. And it's been great hanging with you. We'll do this again. We'll wait about 6 months to do it again and hang out again and see where we both are at that time and what cool guests we both have had at that time.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Thanks, Rich.
Awesome. MisFit Nation, remember, a day tomorrow with you is better than a day without you. If you feel like you're hitting that darkness, that wall's coming up, don't hesitate to reach out to either us, info@themisfitnation.com, Steven at themisfitnation.com, or Jake at themisfitnation.com, or dial 988 and take option 1 if you're a military or veteran. If not, just go through the prompts. Get someone to help you. You are loved, and people want to have you around. Till next time on Tuesday, the crew will have Kurt Linville, and I'll just be behind the speakers here talking to you. Be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are
MisFit Nation. MisFit Nation.